Angie's List is now Angie. Whether you need help with routine maintenance or you're planning your dream renovation, Angie connects you with top local pros who can get the job done right. It's easy to see reviews, compare quotes, and instantly book hundreds of projects. Plus, when you book and pay through Angie, they'll cover your project up to the full purchase price, plus limited damage protection with their happiness guarantee. Check out Angie.com, and for more on the happiness guarantee, go to Angie.com/happiness-guarantee.htm.
All right, thank you for watching. Don Lemon tonight with the big star, D. Lemon, right now. I know you have Officer Fanone on, so important, given the news of the fourth member of the protective force that day to take their own life. Really shines a light on how we have to treat each other with respect and let people know it's okay to talk about how they feel and to express their pain, and that it won't be seen as weakness.
I agree 100%, and I think he will as well. As a matter of fact, after I heard about this, I called him last night. I didn't hear from him. I texted him. I didn't hear from him. And then I called him today, and I said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm fine." And he talked to me about it, and then we talked about it. He should go on the show, and he should discuss it because that has the greatest impact of being able to say it publicly. What he actually said to me was, the first time I actually talked about this publicly, it really helped me because there I was saying it in front of the world on your show, and it really helped me. It made it easier for me to actually be able to talk about it in therapy. He'll tell us a little bit later on. But I think anything that we can do, Chris, to get the stigma off of mental health issues in this country, I know you're a big proponent of that, I think that we should do it.
I think we have to do it. You know why? The days of believing it doesn't touch us are over.
Yeah.
Everybody has it in their own life or the life of somebody they love. So nobody has an excuse of saying that it's just weakness, suck it up. We all know better.
Can you imagine, though, having gone through what they did and having people deny the existence of what happened, deny their efforts to protect that, and their lives could have been taken from them, you know, and some of them, their lives were taken in a different way. Another lost his life the day after the insurrection. But can you imagine having to deal with this every day now for months and months and months, and then having the very people you protect deny that it even happened? As Michael Fanone said, I went to hell and back, and then I have people now telling me that there is no hell, or hell doesn't even, or wasn't that bad. Yeah.
I can, because we've watched it happen.
Yeah.
And we've seen it happen before.
Yeah.
The good news is there's always a chance for change, and hopefully we'll see that here. But our hearts and our thoughts have to go out to the families of these officers who took their own lives.
I'm going to make my witness, as you say, and you
Make
know
your
what?
Witness.
I love you, brother.
I love you, D. Lemon.
All right. This is Don Lemon tonight. The calls are getting louder and louder. This is what I'm talking about. Top Democrats from New York to the White House calling on Governor Andrew Cuomo to resign. That in the wake of the bombshell report from the state's attorney general that alleges the governor sexually harassed 11 women, including state employees and a New York State trooper. The report also says that he retaliated against one woman who went public with her allegations against him. And the president of the United States couldn't be more blunt. Question: should Governor Andrew Cuomo resign? Answer: yes. And there's more.
Back in March, you said that if the investigation confirmed the allegations against Governor Cuomo, then he should resign. So will you now call on him to resign, given the investigator said the 11 women were credible?
I stand by that statement.
Are you now calling on him to resign?
Yes.
And if he doesn't resign, do you believe he should be impeached and removed from office?
Let's take one thing at a time here. I think he should resign. I understand that the state legislature may decide to impeach. I don't know that for a fact. I've not read all that data.
Joe Biden, Andrew Cuomo, we're friends, allies. The governor had a primetime speaking slot at the Democratic convention. So this isn't the only president telling the governor to resign. This isn't only the president telling the governor to resign. It's Joe telling Andrew to step down. And he's not the only one. Nancy Pelosi putting out a statement today, quote, "As always, I commend the women who came forward to speak their truth. I call upon the governor to resign." Both of New York senators calling for him to step down.
We continue to believe that the governor should resign.
These actions are inappropriate for the governor of the governor of New York State, and I do believe he should resign.
So the question is, what happens now? Will Andrew Cuomo take a page out of the Trump playbook? The last thing you might have expected from him in the past? And just hunker down? His tone deaf, I should say, defiant, taped statement didn't really help him.
I want you to know directly from me that I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances. I am 63 years old. I've lived my entire adult life in public view. That is just not who I am. And that's not who I have ever been.
That was his response. But his response gave his detractors fodder, ammunition, content. And also the accusers, Charlotte Bennett, a former Cuomo aide, is now saying if he is not willing to step down, the governor should be impeached. And she goes on to say this.
He sexually harassed me. I am not confused. It is not confusing. I am living in reality, and it's sad to see that he's not.
And the report is damning. Interviews with 179 people, more than 74,000 documents, and stories from women who say they were groped, grabbed, kissed.
Governor Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women, many of whom were young women, by engaging in unwanted groping, kisses, hugging.
Some suffered through unwanted touching and grabbing of their most intimate body parts.
The governor hugged Executive Assistant Number 1 and reached under her blouse to grab her breast. The governor held her so closely that her breasts were pressed against his body, and he sometimes ran his hands up and down her back while he did so. There were also several occasions on which the governor grabbed her butt. The governor pressed and ran his fingers across the chest of a woman while reading the name of her company, whose logo was on her chest.
Damning. Damning. And there's always a tweet for everything that we have learned lately, especially during the last administration. But this one now from the governor. This is from the governor who in 2013, in a tweet uncovered by CNN's K-File, said, there should be a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to sexual harassment and must send a clear message that his behavior is not tolerated. That, as a pandemic of the unvaccinated, is crowding hospitals and hotspots all across this country. A CNN analysis finds at the current pace, it will take until mid-February to get at least one dose of vaccine into all eligible Americans. Mid-February. Do we have that much time? Do we? Imagine what could happen between now and then if we don't get shots into arms much, much faster. Yet governors in states like Texas and Florida are putting politics ahead of public health with their anti-mask orders. Tonight, the President Joe Biden turning up the heat. His message, do the right thing or get out of the way.
Florida and Texas account for 1/3 of all new COVID-19 cases in the entire country. Just 2 states. Look, we need leadership from everyone. If some governors aren't willing to do the right thing to beat this pandemic, then they should allow businesses and universities who want to do the right thing to be able to do it. I say to these governors, please help. But if you aren't going to help, at least get out of the way of the people who are trying to do the right thing. Use your power to save lives.
Looking at you, Governor Greg Abbott, with your ban on mask mandates, even in Houston, where the mayor told city workers yesterday that they need to start wearing masks again. Looking at you, Governor Ron DeSantis, blaming the media.
I think it's important to point out because obviously media does hysteria. You try to fearmonger, you try to do this stuff. And when they'll talk about hospitalizations, our hospitals are open for business.
It's so easy to blame the media. Come on, man. Blame the media? That's your answer? Tell it to the people in Florida hospitals hitting an all-time high of patients in one day today. You can take your COVID denying and, you can get the idea. I've said it before, lies are killing us. and they're killing our democracy, like the lies from the January 6th deniers, who are dishonoring the American heroes who fought to defend the Capitol that day, those we've lost and those who are still suffering the effects of one of the darkest days in our history. 4 police officers who defended the seat of our democracy have died by suicide.
Their deaths are a sad reminder of that shameful day in our country's history and of the physical and mental scars it left the officers who risked their lives to protect our Capitol and our democracy.
Officer Michael Fanone calls the lying and denying. Well, I'll let him explain it.
What makes the struggle harder and more painful is to know so many of my fellow citizens, including so many of the people I put my life at risk to defend, are downplaying or outright denying what happened. I feel like I went to hell and back to protect them and the people in this room. But too many are now telling me that hell doesn't exist or that hell actually wasn't that bad. The indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful.
Mike Fanone is here tonight. But there is no question the Republican deniers bear the blame for the lies about January 6th, comparing those rioters to tourists, peaceful patriots, Antifa, Black Lives Matter.
You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
By and large, it was peaceful protests, except for, there were a number of people, basically agitators, that whipped the crowd and breached the Capitol. And, that's really the truth of what's happening here. I knew those are people that love this country, that truly respect law enforcement, would never do anything to break a law. And so I wasn't concerned.
Outright propaganda and lies are being used to unleash the national security state against law-abiding U.S. citizens, especially Trump voters. As a result, the DOJ is harassing peaceful patriots across the country.
It was Trump supporters who lost their lives that day, not Trump supporters who were taking the lives of others.
There have been things worse than people without any firearms coming into a building.
Not to mention, and I know some of you would prefer I didn't mention him, the disgraced, twice impeached, one-term former president himself, who claims that there was what he called a lot of love in that crowd. What are they trying to hide? We all saw what happened that day. We all know it had nothing to do with love. We all know it had nothing to do with tourists or peaceful patriots or Black Lives Matter or Antifa. We saw it with our own eyes. The crowd that stormed the United States Capitol put up a gallows outside. They hunted lawmakers in the hallways, forcing them to run for it. The bloodthirsty rioters who beat those brave police officers to within an inch of their lives. The January 6th deniers dishonor every single American hero who fought to defend our democracy that day. But the party of the big lie and the big liar seem to be beyond shame. President Joe Biden says New York Governor Andrew Cuomo should resign after the state's investigation found the governor sexually harassed multiple women. Will he resign? Now what?
These interviews and pieces of evidence reveal a deeply disturbing yet clear picture. Governor Cuomo sexually harassed current and former state employees in violation of both federal and state laws.
Owning a home is a great thing. It's yours, it's a part of you, and a reflection of who you are. Great things can take a lot of work, though. Maintenance, repairs, and updates, you know the drill. Unfortunately, there isn't an owner's manual for taking care of your home, so sometimes you need a professional to step in and help. Introducing Angie, the app that puts the home help you need all in one place. And you can use it for whatever you need done, even when you need it done now. With Angie, you can connect with expert professionals for hundreds of projects and see clear upfront pricing. You can even book appointments and securely pay pros through the app in seconds. It's never been easier to fix emergency leaks, find the best contractor for a renovation, or schedule all your seasonal maintenance so you don't have to worry about it.
This is Angie, your home for everything home. Download the Angie app today or go to Angie.com.
So here's our big story tonight. The pressure is mounting on New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to step down following a damning report from the state's attorney general detailing sexual harassment allegations against the governor. President Joe Biden saying the governor needs to resign. And other powerful Democrats, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and both of New York's senators, are also saying that he has lost their support. I want to bring in now CNN's chief White House correspondent Caitlin Collins and CNN's senior legal analyst Laura Coates. Good evening to both of you. Caitlin, I must say you pressed the president today. I found it riveting as I was watching it live. You pressed him on the governor, and his response was unequivocal that the governor needs to resign. It's a crushing blow for the governor because the two have been longtime allies and friends. Can you talk to me about that relationship?
Yeah, they have had this kind of political alliance since about 2015 when President Biden was first exploring whether or not he should run for president. And they have forged a bond since then where they have relied on one another, talked often publicly about one another. And so when this first became a thing and this investigation first got underway, was a real challenge for the White House of how do you handle this and what is the appropriate response. And you saw today, Governor Cuomo even used a picture of him and President Biden in his response, his self-defense against these claims that were backed up by this investigation. But I don't think President Biden really had a lot of options here, Don, because he did say in March that if this investigation corroborated those claims, that he would call on Cuomo to resign. And so today he said, yes, bluntly, he is standing by that. And he does think that Governor Cuomo should resign.
Laura, no other way to put it, that report is damning, scathing in its detail. It found all 11 women claiming harassment to be credible. Their accounts are corroborated, some by real-time texts. Talk about the weight of the evidence, please.
I mean, you're talking about 179 different interviews with people, 11 witnesses corroborating one another. You've got the idea of someone who did not even come forward until after she heard the governor make a statement earlier in the year that he had never acted inappropriately, then reported to other colleagues about it. They outline a culture of toxicity, of intimidation, of bullying, of flirtation. And they really describe a duplicitous atmosphere where on paper, this governor's office was well aware of the standard. In fact, they had written a law just several years ago lowering the threshold for what it would even take to try to bring a sexual harassment claim. And they had this notion of what was on paper versus what was happening in reality. And I thought really damning here, Don, was a member of his own security detail, a state trooper who also was one of those 11 women to come forward and talk about it. And I found Governor Cuomo's later montage of photos that Caitlin's speaking about, I mean, as if the allegations were limited to kissing on the cheek. It's about groping as well. It's about inappropriate conversations. It's about, at one point, groping someone's buttocks, touching a chest as well, going underneath a blouse to grope a woman's breast. I mean, some of this behavior, I don't know if there's going to be actual criminal charges based on what could form the basis of an unwanted, non-consensual assault charge in most jurisdictions. I'm not sure when this actually took place, but certainly when you're asking for the opportunity to lead, as you are when you ask to be the governor of a state, you are held to a higher standard. But I think we can all agree that if these are true, the baseline should be decency, and that has totally eluded this executive chamber.
Did Caitlin, I have to ask you, because Biden said previously that he wanted to wait for the report, and if it turned out to be true, that he would have to resign and that he could be prosecuted. I'm wondering if there was a response to that today, and if this state trooper, those allegations, if that changed anything for the White House, or if that was surprising to the White House or at the White House.
I think it surprised a lot of people. And this morning, when this was happening around 11 a.m., when the Attorney General of New York was announcing this investigation, a lot of the televisions in the West Wing were turned to this, and people were watching closely. And the press secretary, Jen Psaki, even said later they found it abhorrent, and they couldn't really see how anyone couldn't, as you watched these investigators who laid out in detail what they had been speaking to witnesses about and what was happening, what in detail they had seen and heard about the governor and the state trooper, which was one of many details that I think were far more damning than what the press accounts of what he had been alleged to have done were previously. And so I think that played a role in it. But whether or not he gets prosecuted, President Biden was specifically asked today whether or not he thinks he should be. He did not answer that, because remember earlier in March when he said there was a chance that could be an option, prosecution. And he also didn't say that he had actually read the report. He said he just knew the final conclusion of the investigation, but hadn't actually delved into the details yet.
Laura, I have to ask you, because the governor's response, it's either brilliant or the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I'm not sure. And because he denied all the allegations and then said that it diminishes, legitimate harassment claims. And I think many might go towards the latter. I'm sure the PR person or someone, the crisis PR person, probably thinks that it was really appropriate. But I wonder how that sits with women and victims around the country, and how it might, in your realm, in a court of law.
Well, remember one thing that's important here. We're not in a court of law, so the burden of proof is really not the issue or the standard.
It's a court
here.
of public
However,
opinion. Yeah.
We are in the court of public opinion, and that's very powerful, particularly when there is a potential political result, including the availability of a gubernatorial impeachment process that could, in fact, take place. And there's a distinction between what happens in a presidential impeachment, because in a presidential impeachment, of course, until the trial is over and there is a conviction and removal, you remain in office. In New York, if there is an impeachment trial going on, then you have to relinquish power to the lieutenant governor. So he could be removed from office if they were essentially to initiate fully these proceedings. But in terms of what your question is, Don, in terms of how it sets with people, I mean, there are a number of minefields he did not successfully navigate here. One was talking about this as a notion of cultural and generational distinctions that he was not aware of. He's the governor of the state of New York, and some of these allegations included conduct up until 2020. We're not talking about the days of gone by and rose-colored glasses. People ought to know, particularly after several years at that point of the Me Too movement, what is appropriate behavior and what is not. And I think he's in a very difficult position here, because remember, he is now criticizing the report as essentially sloppy, not comprehensively investigated to find out what the true matter is or the truth is. He actually commissioned the Attorney General's office in New York to do this report, handing over the reins to people who are very well respected. And in many respects, he's gone about a playbook that we've seen before, haven't we? The idea of saying this is all sort of political, or the quote he used was trial by newspaper, trying to characterize and weaponize everyday behavior and normalize things. Well, actually, the opposite is true. What they're trying to do in their findings, they're just findings, not indictments, not criminal charges, but in the findings, essentially saying what was normalized in the executive chamber of the governor's office was exactly the opposite of what ought to be normalized in any state that has laws to protect people, particularly women in the workplace, from a hostile, sexually charged work environment, let alone unwanted, non-consensual touching.
I've got to, I want to make sure that that I got the question out right. I'm not sure if it was accurate. In his response, I'm just wondering if his response, if it was seen by the country as, look, I don't know what else he would say, as blaming the victim. That's what I'm asking. Do you understand what I'm saying, Laura?
I do. And remember, one of the things they said in the report was that he actually had some sort of email or conversation about how victim shaming, that might not be a good strategy. Not because it's the wrong thing to do, but it might not play well with the public. And so you've got this dynamic behind the scenes going on, Don, where they're contemplating exactly what your question is. And I think they still did not navigate the minefield in the pre-recorded, no reporters' questions, no reporters from the likes of our own Caitlin Collins to ask the questions we're all wanting to know.
Well, Caitlin, you asked the questions today. So thank you for that. And Laura, thank you for your analysis. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Don.
So the Attorney General says 11 women accusing Governor Cuomo are credible. Well, Marianne Wang is here. She is the attorney for 2 of his accusers, and she'll tell us what they're saying tonight. She's next. The New York Attorney General's report going into shocking detail on the sexual harassment allegations against Governor Andrew Cuomo, with the accounts of 11 women. Virginia Limiatis is one of them. Investigators today describing what she said she experienced.
At another event in May of 2017, the governor pressed and ran his fingers across the chest of a woman while reading the name of her company, whose logo was on her chest.
Well, the report also highlighting experiences from current and former aides to the governor, including Alyssa McGrath. She told investigators about an experience in early 2019 when she was preparing to write down notes from Governor Cuomo. The report says, and I quote here, that Ms. McGrath looked up at him and saw that he was staring down into Ms. McGrath's shirt, which was a silk-like blouse that was loosely hanging off of her as she was slightly bent forward. After Ms. McGrath looked up and saw that the governor had been looking in the area of her chest, the governor asked her what was on her necklace, which was hanging between Ms. McGrath's breast and shirt. And Ms. McGrath understood the governor's questions about her necklace as confirmation that, in fact, he had been looking down her shirt, and she felt embarrassed, uncomfortable, and stressed. I'm going to bring in now Marianne Wang, the attorney for Alyssa McGrath and Virginia Lemiatis. I want to make sure, is it Alyssa or Alicia? I just want to make sure that I'm saying it properly. It's Alyssa.
Alyssa McGrath.
Yeah. I just want to make sure. Thank you. And I was reading that slowly because I want to get it. I want our viewers to hear the details because the details are damning. First of all, thank you for joining us, Marianne. The details are damning.
Thank you for having me.
You know, the women put in this position, and here you go. It's been a traumatic experience. How are your clients feeling tonight?
You know, they feel on one level vindicated and very grateful to the Attorney General and the investigators for doing such a thorough review of their reports and very carefully reviewing the evidence that corroborates their reports. They also, you know, fundamentally, like every woman in this position, it's not that they want to be in this position. They wish they had never been subjected to this kind of behavior. All they were trying to do was do work and show up for work and contribute in the way that we all want to make a living and to contribute to our state government and to the work we do every day. So, but nonetheless, they were subjected to this horrible behavior that is, you know, causes enormous shame and deep denigration of your personhood and your and it's humiliating. So it's a mixture of emotion. There's enormous gratitude. There were definitely some tears, a feeling of vindication that the findings were what they were. But fundamentally, they should never have been put in this place in the first instance.
Listen, I'm not sure if you heard me the segment before when I asked our senior legal analyst Laura Coates about his response. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. I mean, you know, he is denying all these allegations of sexual harassment. He's trying to claim that there are cultural and generational perspectives that he hadn't fully appreciated. Listen to part of it, and then I'll get your response, Marianne. Here it is.
Okay.
I do kiss people on the forehead. I do kiss people on the cheek. I do kiss people on the hand. I do embrace people. I do hug people, men and women. I do on occasion say, ciao Bella. On occasion, I do slip and say sweetheart or darling or honey. I do banter with people. I do tell jokes, some better than others. I am the same person in public as I am in private.
You put out a response saying that his response was laughable. Talk to me about that. What did you think of it?
It was exactly that. It was manipulative the way he is, which is manipulating facts, which were essentially not true. And it's insulting. It's deeply insulting to these women. These are not small children, which is the way that he's describing them. These are women who are showing up to work, to make a living and to contribute. And they know exactly what they're experiencing, just as he knew exactly what he was doing. These are not kisses on the forehead or on the cheeks or innocent hugs. It's grabbing breasts. It's touching breasts. It's grabbing buttocks. It's sexual. There's no question about it. And he did it with multiple women, as detailed in the report. The details here matter, and that's why the report is so so damning, in my view, because it is so thorough. And there's no ambiguity about what he did. The women know, and he does too. He just is trying once again to manipulate and obfuscate. And I don't think New Yorkers will accept it this time.
I got to ask you this before I let you go. Will a resignation satisfy your clients?
My clients certainly believe he should accept responsibility and resign. In my view, I think he should finally pay for his behavior that has spanned years in other ways as well. I don't know exactly what that will mean.
What do you mean by that? In other ways as well? What do you mean?
I mean, I think that people who look at this and carefully, I think not just him, but other people who enabled it as well or enforced this toxic culture, all of them should be held to account. And what that means precisely, I don't have an answer yet. I mean, there are a lot of people looking at this right now, obviously. And the first thing is that he should not be in a position of power any longer. He should not be the head of our government. As I've said elsewhere, I don't think the head of a company wouldn't be allowed to do this. Why should the head of the government be allowed in this position any longer?
Marianne Wang, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We have some breaking news to get to right now and talk about the results of the coming in now for Ohio's special election. It's just coming in. A Trump-endorsed candidate running in a tense Democratic primary, both showing where their parties are heading. Stay with us. We'll give you breaking news right after this. So here's the breaking news. CNN has a projection in the special Democratic primary in Ohio's 11th congressional district. I want to bring in CNN's chief national affairs correspondent, Mr. Jeff Zelny. Jeff, good evening to you. What are you hearing?
John, this is this is a big win in Cleveland for Shontel Brown, the Democratic establishment candidate in this special election to fill the seat of former Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, who, of course, joined the Biden cabinet. You can see right there, Shontel Brown, she's a member of the Cuyahoga County Council, the local Democratic chairwoman, defeating Nina Turner. This is a big win for Shontel Brown for this reason. The entire establishment party leaders and apparatus came behind Shontel Brown in the final weeks of this race to push her over the top of Nina Turner. Of course, a longtime progressive leader. She was backed by Bernie Sanders and many others who were campaigning hard for her over the weekend. But Don, significantly, this is the latest in a string of establishment moderate victories in these primaries across the country. We saw it in the New York mayor's race. We saw it in the Virginia governor's race. So certainly this will take the wind out of the sails of the progressive movement that is trying to be more ascendant here. But President Biden's still the leader of his party, and I can tell you, he was front and center in this race because his agenda was. James Clyburn was there over the weekend saying, elect Shontel Brown to get the president's agenda moving. Don, also just a little bit south of here in Columbus, a big win actually for President Trump in Ohio's 15th congressional district. His candidate, the one he backed, actually won that Republican primary. This comes a week after his candidate lost a Texas special election. So certainly just a snapshot in time here in this off-election year election, but a big win for the establishment. This will certainly be discussed in the days to come here. What is really to be made of the progressive movement here in Washington, Don.
Here we are in August with election projections.
Right.
Thank you.
Snapshot in time.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. 4 officers have now died of suicide after responding to the attack in the Capitol. Officer Michael Fanone is here. He's going to weigh in right after this. The Senate unanimously awarding the Congressional Gold Medal to officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th. This coming just hours after we learned a 4th police officer took his own life after responding to the insurrection. The Metropolitan Police Department announcing the suicides of officers Kyle DeFreitag and Gunther Hashida on the same day. D.C. Police Officer Jeffrey Smith and Capitol Police Officer Howard Liebengood also took their own lives after January 6th. Joining me now, one of the heroes who defended our Capitol on that day and testified about it before the Select Committee, D.C. Metropolitan Police Officer Michael Fanone, and my friend. Mike, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
So, we don't know exactly why Officer Hashida or Officer DeFreitag took their own lives, but we talk about the January 6th insurrection, the impact it's had on your mental health and other officers. How big of a struggle is this for officers?
I mean, I think we're experiencing, I think, what I would describe as an epidemic of law enforcement suicides. It's a big problem.
And it's not just that. Also, I mean, it's also it's the denial of what happened to you by some of the very folks that you saved. I'm going to put up this video. This is video. It shows how you almost died on January 6th. But I mean, some Republicans. I mean, look, we don't have to play what because I want to hear from Mike. But you know what some Republicans have said that day. Their denials, Mike, is having an impact on the officer's mental health. No.
I mean, it certainly had an impact on my mental health. Having experienced the trauma that I did, and then having people deny that it's reality. But law enforcement is an incredibly difficult profession. We experience people at their worst almost all of the time. And one of the things that I think that has really brought this to bear for me is, we need to normalize a conversation, not just in the law enforcement community, but really in American culture. We need to normalize the conversation about folks struggling with trauma and mental health issues. We need to get rid of this stigma that people who struggle with those issues are weak. The strongest people that I've ever known in my life have grappled with trauma and with the mental health difficulties that go along with having survived trauma.
Mm-hmm. Today we talked, I have to be honest, I kept calling you because I hadn't heard from you, and I said, I'm worried about you. Are you okay? Are you okay? And we had I loved our conversation today because you said police officers pretty much always see the worst in people. These aren't usually pleasant experiences when a police officer, has an interaction with a civilian. And many times you show up at the scene of someone who's murdered, someone who has killed themselves, someone who's, you find bodies floating in the river and so on. I mean, and officers need to be able to deal with that and speak about it, and it needs to be respected.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's easy to talk about. I think that if you really stop and think what that entails, these are human beings. Police officers are just regular people. We're not robots. And we do go out and deal with these situations day in and day out. And then we have to go home and deal with, the same problems that everyone else experiences as, a father, a mother, a husband, a wife, all the trials and tribulations that go along with that. And then we also have to process, whatever traumatic experiences, sometimes multiple within one shift. It's difficult and it takes its toll. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't help when people, create this, like I said, a stigma that, reaching out for help to process those situations is a sign of weakness. Yeah. We're starting to address it now, and we have resources available to officers, but having those resources available and having officers feel comfortable accessing them are two totally different things.
Mm-hmm. When you said it was disgraceful because after what happened on January 6th, you still had people denying it. You said that part is disgraceful. What do you want people to know about, honestly, Mike? What is that denying of your reality or your experience doing to you and possibly others?
I can speak for myself and maybe the few dozen police officers that I talk to regularly, and it's devastating. To know that I went there on January 6th to do my job, did my job, and succeeded, along with hundreds of other police officers, and then to have people
demonize me or dismiss, my account of that day or just the reality of that day. It's devastating.
Before we end this conversation, I want to talk to you about, this is personal for you because you knew Officer Gunther Hashida very well. What do you want people to know about him, Mike?
Gunther and I came on the department at the same time. We were both assigned to the same district and worked in the same patrol service area. And then we worked together off and on for pretty much the better portion of my career. Gunther was the most professional, dedicated police officer that I ever worked with and ever had the pleasure of being around. He was at times a good friend and confident, and I will miss him dearly.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'll say this because I think that everyone should talk to their friends this way. I said to you today that there's nothing that you could tell me that would be embarrassing or that I would judge you for, or there's not a time of the day or night that you can't pick up the phone and call me if you're feeling a certain kind of way. You know what I'm saying? And that goes for you, that goes for Officer Dunn, that goes for any of the officers who I've interviewed here and any of my friends at home who may be watching. So I really mean that, brother, and I love you. And you take care of yourself. I'm very proud of what you're doing. Thank you for appearing.
Yeah, I love you as well, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on and talk about this. I don't want to lose any more officers.
Yeah. Amen. Thanks, Mike. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
As we have been discussing, there is no shame in asking for help for yourself or for someone you know who is struggling. Look at your screen right now. You can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline or text the crisis text line at the numbers up on your screen. We will leave them up for a moment and then we'll go to break. Tonight, President Joe Biden joining a growing list of federal and state officials calling on New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to resign. This follows the release of an investigative report by the New York Attorney General saying the governor sexually harassed multiple women. The report saying Cuomo's conduct violated multiple federal and state laws, the Democratic governor denying the allegations. Also tonight, President Joe Biden calling on Republican governors in states where COVID cases are spiking to do more to help stop the spread or get out of the way of people trying to save lives. And CNN projecting two big winners in two special congressional primaries tonight in Ohio. I want to bring in now CNN's Paula Reed with the latest on the report detailing a pattern of sexual harassment by Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Tonight, New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo loses the support of his most powerful political ally, President Joe Biden.
I think he should resign.
This comes after the New York Attorney General's office said earlier today that the governor sexually harassed multiple women and violated federal and state laws.
The investigation found that Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed current and former New York State employees by engaging in unwelcome and non-consensual touching and making numerous offensive comments of a suggestive and sexual nature that created a hostile work environment for women.
Investigators concluded the governor sexually harassed 11 women, including a New York State trooper assigned to his protection.
In an elevator, while standing behind the trooper, he ran his finger from her neck down her spine and said, "Hey, you." Another time, she was standing holding the door open for the governor. As he passed, he took his open hand and ran it across her stomach from her belly button to the hip where she keeps her gun. She told us that she felt completely violated to have the governor touch her, as she put it, between her chest and her privates.
Another accuser described similar inappropriate touching.
On November 16th, 2020, in the executive mansion, the governor hugged executive assistant number 1 and reached under her blouse to grab her breast. There were also several occasions on which the governor grabbed her butt.
The report states, "We also conclude that the executive chamber's culture, one filled with fear and intimidation, while at the same time normalizing the governor's frequent flirtations and gender-based comments, contributed to the conditions that allowed the sexual harassment to occur and persist." Cuomo was quick to respond, denying the allegations.
I want you to know directly from me that I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances. I am 63 years old. I've lived my entire adult life in public view. That is just not who I am, and that's not who I have ever been.
The allegations against Cuomo ramped up earlier this year when Charlotte Bennett, a former aide, alleged that Cuomo had asked her questions about her sex life during a June 2020 conversation in the state capitol. She also hinted at a pattern of retaliation.
Do you believe that he was propositioning you?
Yes.
For what? Sex.
Tonight, Bennett says Cuomo must resign.
He sexually harassed me. I am not confused. It is not confusing. I am living in reality, and it's sad to see that he's not.
Cuomo addressed Bennett personally in his remarks today.
I did ask her questions I don't normally ask people. I did ask her how she was doing and how she was feeling, but I was wrong. I have heard Charlotte and her lawyer, and I understand what they are saying. But they read into comments that I made and draw inferences that I never meant.
Paula Reed, CNN, New York.
Paula Reed, thank you so much for that. Joining me now, CNN senior political analyst John Avlon and legal analyst Jennifer Rogers. She's a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. So good to have both of you on. Thank you so much. Good evening. Jennifer, I'm going to start with you. 11 women now speaking out against Governor Andrew Cuomo. And investigators say that they interviewed 179 people and reviewed 74,000 pieces of evidence. Cuomo is denying any wrongdoing, but this is an extremely thorough investigation. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, Don. And that's really what puts the lie to this notion that Charlotte Bennett or another woman just kind of misunderstood what he meant. 11 women, and the experts who were the investigators in this case and know the law better than anyone agree that is clear-cut sexual harassment. So no, you're not wrong at all. This clearly was harassment. And today those women, I hope, felt some vindication from these experts finding just exactly that.
John, there were a lot of people waiting on this report saying, hey, let's wait and see what the report finds. And here it is, or what the investigation uncovers. Here it is. He lost a lot of allies today. President Joe Biden says that he must resign, meaning Cuomo. Not only is this coming from the president and the leader of the Democratic Party, but Biden is a governor's close personal friend. How significant are his comments?
It's huge. Look, this report is detailed, it is damning, and it cuts the legs out from any argument that of just straight denial. It's too broad a pattern. Even if it covers a broad array of accusations, they all fall under the rubric of sexual harassment. And I think, Democrats, some had felt in the wake of Al Franken, for example, that you didn't want to rush to judgment. But this is not a rush to judgment anymore. This is detailed. And when you have the entire New York congressional delegation, all the regional governors, and the President of the United States, who you say is also a friend and former ally of Andrew Cuomo, all saying resign, the situation is just untenable.
Well, look, but I go on to add, you've got Speaker Pelosi, you have Senator Schumer, Gillibrand, as you said, the entire delegation, governors in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. The list just seems to go on here.
Yeah.
Do you think he can hold on politically, John?
No. I think he's going to have to make a choice about whether he is willing to risk impeachment. And already, CNN's been validating the numbers. The vote count's still coming in, but it's not looking good for him, even though we haven't had a governor impeached in New York since 1913.
Wow.
Or resign. Or possibly, there's some scenario where perhaps he promises not to run for re-election and has a orchestrated, time out the door. But I don't think the patience and the political winds are going that way. His own lieutenant governor, who would take over upon his resignation or impeachment, today denounced his behavior.
Yeah, John, you're making a very good point, and I want to let you finish it. But it's not like what we see with the presidential impeachment. You don't stay in office, right, and then they decide. He has to temporarily step aside and then let, I think, the lieutenant governor, until they figure out what to do. And then if they vote not to convict him, then he remains governor until the end of his term. But if they do, he's already gone.
Yeah,
right?
and exactly right. So this is not looking good or tenable for him. And I must say, for all his effectiveness in many respects as governor, and it's a challenging position, he has not engendered the kind of interpersonal loyalty that might normally insulate a politician from this. And it's why the accusations, whether you call it a tough environment as he would describe it or a toxic environment, there's not that interpersonal goodwill towards him. And that is proving to be, I think, the final straw when it comes to Andrew Cuomo and his gubernatorial.
Jennifer, some of the quotes here, I want scared and uncomfortable, freaked out, deeply humiliated, completely violated. This is how women describe the way Governor Cuomo made them feel. It is stunning. What does it say about the workplace culture in the governor's office that it went on like this?
Well, the report is very clear about that, too. I mean, they interviewed 179 people, and it said that effectively everyone who had knowledge about the environment in the executive chamber, with the exception of a few of his top aides, all said consistent things, which was it was a bad environment. It was a toxic environment. People were afraid. People were uncomfortable. I mean, that's really stunning. So not just these women who were actually harassed, but the entire atmosphere of the executive chamber was this negative place to work, this negative environment. So I really think it speaks to, not just his actions with respect to these women who have accused him, but his ability as a leader to, create an environment where people want to work. You just can't be an effective leader if people are saying that about the place that you run.
Look, Norah O'Donnell today, John, of CBS News, the evening news, spoke to one of Cuomo's accusers about the governor's video response to the report. This is Charlotte Bennett.
His propaganda video was not only uncomfortable and inappropriate, but downright weird and unnecessary.
Why do you call it a propaganda video?
Because it's not about anything other than protecting him and his office. It is not protecting New York. He is not speaking for New Yorkers. He is not trying to do anything other than maintain the power that he has currently.
So in that video, Cuomo showed multiple pictures of himself embracing people over the years to show that this is how he acts with everyone. But it comes nowhere near answering the accusations of groping, intimidation, retaliation that he is accused of. What did you think of his response in this video and then her response after seeing this video?
I thought the Cuomo video was designed to try to put one specific photograph that the New York Times put on its page in context. He is a touchy-feely politician. There's plenty of examples of, touching foreheads, grabbing faces, etc. But that does not does not address the heart of these accusations, particularly with regard to that young woman, Charlotte, who worked in his executive office, where there's an accusation of, grabbing her butt and reaching into her breast. It's not the same moral universe. So while he, was trying to basically say the old Bill Clinton argument, I want to go back and work for the American people, in this case, the people of the state of New York. We're trying to say, look, there's a generational cultural divide I have not been sensitive enough to. It does not address the specifics of that particular complaint, and that was tone deaf, I thought.
Yeah, and what the definition of is, right? Is that what we're dealing with now in this situation? Jennifer, not even, exactly. So Jennifer, what's next based on what we're learning? Do you think that Cuomo could be in criminal jeopardy?
I don't think so, Don, because, you have to obviously violate a criminal statute to be in criminal jeopardy. And the only one that seems to apply here in New York is something called forcible touching. And that requires touching of sexual or intimate parts of the body, so genitals, breasts. There is one complaint by Executive Assistant 1 that alleges groping under the top. But, again, you're now talking about a claim that's been credited by these investigators. It's a very different matter to prove beyond a reasonable doubt at trial that someone is guilty. So I expect, and that's a misdemeanor, by the way, that offense. So I expect that they will not bring charges here. There will be civil lawsuits. There will likely be impeachment, but probably no criminal jeopardy.
All right. Yeah. Jennifer, John, thank you very much. I appreciate
it.
Thanks,
John. Be well.
Yeah, and you as well. I want to bring in now New York State Assemblyman Yuhleen New. Yuhleen New, Assemblywoman, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So the New York State Assembly, the Speaker says that Governor Cuomo has lost the confidence of the Democratic majority and can, and I quote here, no longer remain in office. If the governor does not resign, should he be impeached?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been calling for his impeachment for a while now, but, I think that, Governor Cuomo has previously called for the expulsion and prosecution of elected officials accused of much smaller offenses than he himself now stands accused of. And by his own, quote unquote, zero tolerance rhetoric, I believe that he should be gone immediately. But there are, as some of your previous interviews have said, there are two sets of rules in Cuomo land. One set for him and one set for everybody else.
If he is impeached, does that mean that the lieutenant governor essentially takes over all of the governor's responsibility, even if it's just temporarily?
Yes, for the rest of his term.
Okay. Assemblywoman New, do you expect Governor Cuomo to fight an impeachment trial? It seems like that's, in his nature to fight, because it doesn't seem like he is backing down.
Yeah, I don't think that he's going to be resigning or not fighting. I think that he's definitely going to be fighting this. I think that, the assembly, today when we were discussing things, there was definitely a discussion of how he might do that. And, I think that it's very, very much to his nature.
This report describes a toxic culture in the governor's office. Do you think anyone else besides Governor Cuomo should be held accountable for this environment? I spoke with the attorney of two of the accusers, and she certainly believes so. But what do you think?
I think so. I think that, it is a systemic thing, but I also think that he should be held accountable for his own actions and for creating that environment. This is a culture of abuse and of systemic abuse that is very, very jarring. Reading this report, I'm still digesting it because there's so much there. His own formal counsel, who is even mentioned in the investigation, is calling for his resignation. So there's a lot there. It took 179 witnesses and a statewide investigation by the Attorney General to actually come to these conclusions. But, I think that we finally did Governor Cuomo with a very harsh reality.
And finally, did you see his video response?
I definitely saw his slideshow, which was very interesting. I don't even know what it would be like to be that staffer, to have had to collect all of these photos and then put them together like this. Let's be I know it's a weird concept to think about, but let's be very clear about what that was. It was gaslighting, right? It was gaslighting New Yorkers the same way that he gaslighted the women that he abused and he harmed. It was the same, it was exactly what Charlotte Bennett had said. It was propaganda, and it is a way to hurt and continue to hurt the people that he's already hurt. And I think that, we have to stop it, right? This is a powerful man who used his power to sexually harass, grope, and intimidate women who worked for him. My heart goes out to all of the women who told their stories, and my heart also goes out to those who are still remaining silent, some of who I know. And I understand, and I hope that the Assembly can bring some closure and accountability for those women.
Yulene New, a member of the New York State Assembly. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you appearing on the program. Be well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. The fight for the future of the Democratic Party heating up tonight in Ohio. CNN projects moderate Shontel Brown has won over progressive candidate Nina Turner. Is it a sign of things to come? Breaking tonight, CNN projects Shontel Brown beats Nina Turner in Ohio's 11th Congressional District special election to replace Marcia Fudge in the House. Turner conceding in an emotional speech earlier tonight.
Tonight, my friends, we have looked across the promised land, but for this campaign, on this night, we will not cross the river. We didn't lose this race. Evil money manipulated and maligned in this election.
So joining me now to discuss is former Obama campaign manager Jim Messina and Mark McKinnon, the former advisor to George W. Bush and executive producer of The Circus. Good evening to both of you gentlemen. Jealous of the hat, but that's okay, Mark. We'll talk about my hat jealousy later. Jim, what's your reaction to how this race played out?
Well, look, on one side, you have kind of national folks wanting to make this a race between a liberal and a moderate, but both of these were progressive candidates. This was really about political positioning. And the winner tonight, who, by the way, started out 35 points behind and was badly outspent, positioned herself as a supporter of Joe Biden, as someone who could work together to get things done, and went back to the old axiom that Mark and I really believe in, which is all politics is local. And she said, I will deliver for my district. I'm going to focus on getting things done, and I'm not going to be a lightning rod in this race. And her opponent, who had way more money, ended up kind of blowing a lead because she nationalized the race and wanted it to be about a greater fight inside the Democratic Party. And voters just don't do that. Democratic voters did exactly what they did in 2020 primaries when they picked Joe Biden. They chose someone who could get along, who could get things done, and she won a major comeback victory tonight, which I hope is a wake-up call to folks in D.C. that need to remember that we're doing historically big things, and we got to work together and work with the president and get things done and not fight amongst ourselves.
Mark McKinnon, Progressive Senator Bernie Sanders was battling it out with the House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn for their candidates in Cleveland. Listen.
They are afraid of her. They are afraid for her because she's going to stand up and fight and take them on.
My job as House Majority Whip is count the votes. And I need somebody that I can count on.
I mean, don't mess with Jim Clyburn, because you know what happened after Jim Clyburn said, I think you all should vote for Joe Biden. Look who is president of the United States today. I mean, this will be seen as a victory for Congressman Clyburn and the establishment wing of the party. Is this a sign of where the party is going or where the party is, and maybe we lost track of it, or maybe the folks in Washington have lost track of it? I don't know.
Well, listen, I hope it's a sign of where the party is and where it's going. I think this is just an example of why Joe Biden won the primary, because of where he stands politically. And I think that's where most Democrats in the country are. Lots of independents are as well. And I think there was this narrative that there was this huge, the physics of the drift in the Republican Party was just going to be so progressive that people were just going to be like leaping off a cliff like lemmings. And this is another example.
You mean
my colleagues
you said
like
the Republican
Jim
Party, you meant the Democratic Party.
The Democratic Party.
Yeah,
so colleagues like Jim and Paul Begala have been, reminding me all the time that it's the people who are really winning races and did in 2020 in those congressional races were really moderate mainstream Republicans. And by the way, given the outcome of the Republican race in which the Trump endorsed candidate won, but the Trump endorsed candidate is a coal lobbyist. So I think that if we look at what kind of Democrats are being elected and what kind of Republicans are being elected, it says a lot about where the parties are headed.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Amen. I've been saying the same thing about the Democratic Party. I actually think that, people pay too much attention to the rights, the rights characterization of the Republican Party, which is, of course, in itself political, and also the folks on social media, which is really progressive and really far left, and it's not where the Democratic Party really is. You look at the people who are actually winning races around the country. Jim, we've got results from another Ohio special election tonight. President Trump's pick, Mark just mentioned him, Mike Carey, winning the nomination. What does that say about Trump's influence in the party?
This is Donald Trump's Republican Party. It's no longer the Republican Party that Mark kind of grew up in and was part of, that Donald Trump now completely owns this party. And you see this every week. There's a parade of planes flying to Mar-a-Lago to beg for his endorsement. You have, the Missouri U.S. Senate race is all about who can get Trump's endorsement. And most of his candidates are winning these elections. And it says to the Republicans, don't be brave, don't go out there and cross him, because you're going to get whacked. And, you look at what he's trying to do to Liz Cheney as well in Wyoming right now. This is just a party that cannot grapple with its past. And until you grapple with that past, you won't walk into the future. And, in 2022 in these congressional races, if they're going to run these kind of candidates in these swing seats, Republicans are going to get their butts kicked, and they should. Mm-hmm. Instead, they need to kind of do what the Democrats did tonight and find candidates who will go to the center and work with both parties to get things done. But so far, you're not seeing the Republicans kind of learn the lessons of Mark McKinnon.
Well, Mark's hat is shaking up and down in agreement with what you're saying. Yeah, Mark, yes, Jim may be correct. But Texas, because there was that stinging defeat for Trump's candidate in a Texas election. How do you square these two results?
Well, the nature of the races were different, Don. I think when you have a situation like you did in Ohio tonight, which is a big multi-candidate field, I think there were 10 people running. An endorsement from the former president is going to have an impact. And it did. I mean, but it's a very stratified race with lots of people running. The race in Texas was much different, where you really had kind of two front runners, and Trump endorsed one, and former Mayor Rick Perry and Congressman Den Crenshaw endorsed the other candidate. So, I certainly, people are going to say that, Trump still has some juice because of today, and he does, obviously. But again, I just stress the fact that this was a multi-candidate field, and I think that no question Trump's going to be a factor through 2022 and beyond. We see how much money he's raising for the Republican Party. But that, in my view, that's the problem with the Republican Party, is that they can't quit him. And until they quit him, there's not going to be a long-range future for the Republican Party.
Mark, Jim, thank you so much. Mark, I need a hat. Keep that in mind. Thank you, sir. Mark, real quick, because I'm going to be talking about COVID. Give me an update on your brother-in-law.
My brother-in-law is out of the hospital and home after 3 weeks, and hallelujah. Fortunately, it took that experience to make him and other members of the family realize that, vaccinations work.
Yeah. I know she's right there listening. Love to Annie. That's her brother. Thank you very much. I'll see you both. Coronavirus cases on the rise all across the country, but 1 in 3 new cases are coming from Texas and Florida. And President Biden's calling out their Republican governors.
But you aren't going to help at least get out of the way of the people who are trying to do the right thing.
The CDC warning, 90% of the country is now in counties with high or substantial spread of the coronavirus. But 1 in 3 cases are coming from 2 Republican-led states whose governors are banning safety measures like mask mandates. President Joe Biden ripping into them today.
And worst of all, some state officials are passing laws or signing orders that forbid people from doing the right thing. As of now, 7 states not only ban mask mandates, but also ban them in their school districts, even for young children who cannot get vaccinated. I say to these governors, please help. But if you aren't going to help, at least get out of the way of the people who are trying to do the right thing.
Joining me now to discuss, CNN medical analyst Dr. Jonathan Reiner. He is the director of the Cardiac Catheterization Program at George Washington University Hospital. And it's our nightly house call that we had with him previously when we were in quarantine in the height of the pandemic, and here we are doing it again. Doctor, good to see you. Thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
You really think that these governors are going to listen to Joe Biden, President Biden? What is it going to take for them to take the safety of their citizens more seriously is the question.
What's so sad about this, Don, is that it doesn't have to be this way. It shouldn't have to, it doesn't violate the rules of physics for a Republican governor to do what's necessary to contain this pandemic. Look, I live in a state, Maryland, that has a Republican governor, Larry Hogan, who has done a terrific job during the pandemic. He prioritized masking early on, had mask mandates in the state for quite a while, prioritized testing. And, right now Maryland is averaging 8 new cases per 100,000 residents. Florida, on the other hand, that has a Republican governor that has just, prohibited mask mandates in the state, has prohibited vaccine passports, has prohibited any type of lockdown throughout the state. Florida has 82 cases per 100,000 residents every day. So the difference is stark. Look, hospitals in Florida are filling with patients, but he's painted himself into a corner. It didn't have to be this way. He needed to support mask mandates. He needs to support vaccine mandates. Florida mandates vaccines for polio and rubella and measles and mumps and hepatitis and chickenpox, but yet he's prohibiting it, mandating it for COVID. Makes no sense to me.
On the other hand, though, you have New York City the mayor here is saying that it's going to require proof of vaccination for indoor dining, gyms, indoor entertainment. Is that the key to getting more people to take the shot?
I think it's already happening. What I've heard today is that pharmacies throughout the city are filling now with people who are starting to get the message that their social lives will be significantly hampered if they don't have a valid vaccine card. Look, when I go to a restaurant now, I look around at the other tables and I'm trying to get a sense, and it's impossible to know, who in this place is vaccinated and who isn't. How nice will it be to dine in an establishment where you know that not just all the diners are vaccinated, but all the servers and the cooks and the staff at the front of the restaurant, everyone that you encounter is vaccinated. That's what you're going to have in New York. In Florida, it's the Wild West, right? You don't know what you're getting. In fact, look, what I say to all Americans is that with Delta now, if you are unvaccinated, you should not go into a restaurant. You should not go into a bar. You are in grave danger of getting sick.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jonathan Reiner. I appreciate it. Be well.
Have a good night, Tom.
Thank you. You as well. Democratic leaders from President Biden to Nancy Pelosi calling on Governor Cuomo to resign. Are going to ask a top senator if he agrees next. Plus, Simone Biles finally takes the competition to the competition floor and revealing a family tragedy. Tonight, President Biden calling on Governor Andrew Cuomo to resign after investigation by New York's Attorney General concluded the governor sexually harassed multiple women. Top Democrats, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, joining Biden in urging Cuomo to step down. I want to bring in now Senator Chris Van Hollen, a Maryland Democrat. Senator, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. The head of your party, President Biden, calling on Governor Cuomo to resign today. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. Don, we now have an independent report from the Attorney General of New York laying out these very serious facts, and I think that the governor's disqualified himself.
Yeah, that's simple, right?
That's simple, yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about the coronavirus. It's obviously the story that we have been following now for 2 years almost. You're a Maryland senator. It's one of 20 states that hit that 70% goal of adults receiving at least one dose. But I want you to take a look at this. It's up on the screen now for our viewers. These are current transmission rates in your state. Almost all of your counties are experiencing, I should say, moderate to high levels of community transmission. The Washington Post reporting now that Maryland doctors are bracing for a COVID surge in the coming months. They are really concerned. What's your concern level?
So, Don, I'm concerned too. I mean, the Delta variant is on the rise. It's on the rise in Maryland and around the country, which is why I also agree with the statement President Biden made today about how we have many of these governors, Republican governors, taking the reckless position of banning mask mandates. It's one thing not to impose one as a governor. It's something else altogether to say to businesses or to local school districts or to local officials, you may not require masks indoors as the CDC may recommend. So I think we've got a long way to go, clearly, to finally defeat this virus. The president's right to call on everybody to get vaccinated and get vaccinated yesterday. We've got to beat this thing. We had more vaccine available in our country than anywhere else in the world. And now we see many European countries having a larger share of their population vaccinated first because we have so many of these reckless statements here in the United States.
Yeah. Listen, New York's mayor is mandating vaccines for some indoor activities. Do you think Maryland should follow suit with any of these kinds of restrictions?
I think that has to be left to the local officials. As I said, no governor should be prohibiting local officials based on those local circumstances from making recommendations. So I do think that should be left to local officials. I support President Biden's decision to require federal employees going back to the workforce to be vaccinated. So my view, Don, is you've got to look at what's happening in any particular place at any particular time.
Senator, if you watch this program, that we have been covering the January 6th insurrection since it began almost every night on this program, because I don't believe it's over, and I know it's not over for the officers who were involved. And we just learned that a fourth officer who responded to the Capitol on January 6th died by suicide. Senator Schumer is saying that he is going to ask the Senate to award the Congressional Gold Medal to officers who defended the Capitol and saved lives, a stark comparison to the members of Congress who are trying to whitewash what really happened on that day.
Yes, and the good news, Don, is in all the terrible news about another officer losing his life, and our hearts go out to his family. We were able in the Senate today to get bipartisan support to award the Congressional Gold Medal to both the Capitol Police officers as well as to the D.C. Metropolitan Police officers. We did that by unanimous vote in the United States Senate. I'm still disgusted by the fact that in the House of Representatives, you had a number of Republican members who really disgraced themselves by opposing awarding those Congressional Gold Medals. As you said, we see the continuing toll of the trauma from that day. The very least we can do is recognize the heroism of those officers. And beyond that, and beyond the gold medals, as those four officers who testified in the House asked, we need to get to the bottom of everything that happened on January 6th and hold people accountable.
Yeah. Listen, we've covered a lot. I got one more thing I want to talk to you about, and that is about the president's $1 trillion infrastructure bill. Senator Schumer is hoping that the final vote will come this week. Do you see that happening, Senator?
Well, I don't know the exact timing. What I do know, Don, is that we are going to get it done, and I'm confident that we will have the votes to pass it. And then right after we pass that important bipartisan infrastructure bill, we will in the Senate pass the budget resolution to set up that process so that we can also enact the other part of President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. Not just the American Jobs Plan, which is essential, but also the American Families Plan, which extends those child tax credits for years to come. It wouldn't end this year, to cut the cost of prescription drugs, to make sure Medicare can cover things like vision, hearing, and dental, and much more. So in the coming days, we're going to pass the one, and then pass the resolution to set up the other effort as well.
Senator Van Hollen, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Good to be with you. Thanks, Don.
Simone Biles with a balancing act today, taking home the bronze and speaking out about a family tragedy that happened just days ago. Stay with us. Superstar U.S. gymnast Simone Biles back in competition today at the Tokyo Olympics, winning a bronze medal in the balance beam final, afterwards saying that she didn't really care about the outcome, that she wasn't even expecting to win a medal, but was just happy to do her routine. It is her second medal in Tokyo and her 7th Olympic medal overall. She had a tough time at these games, withdrawing from the women's team gymnastics final and 3 individual finals due to ongoing mental health issues. Biles saying that she is very proud of herself today. After all, she has really been through a lot, but also revealing a family tragedy, her aunt dying unexpectedly 2 days ago, saying people have no idea what athletes go through during the Olympics. Congratulations to her, and we wish her well. Thanks for watching. Our coverage continues.